never planned to end up in bed with my brother's best friend. One reckless night, one mistake, that's all it was supposed to be. He had a rule. He didn't do relationships. He didn't get attached. And he never went back to the same woman twice. Except, he came back for me. Again and again. For 7 years, we carried on a secret relationship hidden in the shadows. No labels, no promises, just stolen moments and whispered words. Lily. He'd say, his voice soft but firm. Just give me time. When the moment's right, I'll tell your brother everything. I'll marry you, I swear. Trust me. Wait for me. So, I waited. 4 long years, clinging to the hope that he'd keep his promise. That someday, I'd be more than a secret. Then, one day, my brother sent me a text. Attached was a picture of a woman. "This is Alaric's fiancée." The message read, "Isn't she gorgeous?" 7 years. 7 years of believing I was his. 7 years of lies. I felt something in me break. Whatever I'd been holding on to, hope, love, faith, it all shattered in an instant. With nothing left to lose, I agreed to the marriage my family had arranged for me. It wasn't love, but at least it wasn't a lie. On my wedding day, I stood at the altar, numb but composed. I'd made my choice, and I was ready to leave the past behind. And then he showed up. Alaric. The moment he saw me in that wedding dress, standing beside another man, something in him snapped. He lost control. Completely. Chapter 1. I've decided to go through with the engagement to the Carter family. I said. There was a long pause on the other end of the line before my dad finally responded, his tone laced with surprise. Didn't you throw a fit about this just last week? What changed your mind all of a sudden? I forced a laugh, though it felt hollow even to me. I thought it through. It's not that bad, really. The marriage will help the family, and that's what matters. He sighed deeply, the kind of sigh that carried both relief and guilt. I'm glad you've come around. You're a smart girl. I knew you'd understand. And listen, that boy from the Carter family, I've met him. He's solid. Good character, smart, capable. He'll treat you well, I'm sure of it. Yeah, I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. Maybe. But Dad, can we keep this from my brother for now? He's been so against this idea, and if he finds out now, he won't take it well. Let's wait a bit, okay? There was a pause, and then a soft chuckle. All right. We'll do it your way. I pressed the end call button, staring at the screen as my chest tightened. I swallowed hard, blinking back the sting of tears. I'd made my choice. There was no going back now. 3 days ago, my brother had shown me a photo. Look at this. He'd said, handing me his phone with a grin. The woman in the picture was beautiful, elegant, poised, her eyes warm and inviting. But it wasn't just her beauty that struck me. It was the familiarity. Her features mirrored mine in subtle, unsettling ways. The shape of her eyes, the curve of her lips. But what truly caught me off guard was the small mole between her brows. It was identical to mine. This is Alaric's fiancée, my brother said, pride evident in his voice. What do you think? Gorgeous, right? I forced myself to nod, the words catching in my throat. She's lovely. They look great together. At last. He added, his tone light. Alaric is getting what he's always wanted. That line hit me like a punch to the gut. Alaric was getting what he always wanted. And me? What was I? A placeholder? A distraction? What were the last 7 years supposed to mean? Alaric had been my brother's college roommate. I'd met him for the first time when I was barely more than a teenager. It was on the university basketball court. Someone had been careless with their aim and sent the ball flying toward me. It hit me square in the chest, and I stumbled backward straight into his arms. He smelled like fresh laundry, that clean, comforting scent that lingered on his clothes. When I looked up, he was smiling down at me, his dark eyes warm and teasing. "Hey, little girl," he said, his voice laced with amusement. "How long are you planning to stay in my arms?" My face burned as I scrambled to get away, muttering some excuse I couldn't even remember now. But that moment stayed with me. From then on, his name Alaric became a secret I carried in my heart. The first time we were together was at my brother's birthday party. He'd had too much to drink, and I was the one who helped him to his room. He was mumbling something under his breath, his words slurred and incoherent. Then, without warning, he turned to me, his hands finding my shoulders, his lips crashing against mine. That night, I gave him everything. My first kiss. My first time. My heart. The next morning, he pulled me into his arms and asked, his voice low and rough, if I wanted to be his girlfriend. I didn't hesitate. I nodded so fast that it probably looked ridiculous. But I didn't care. At that moment, I was his, and that was all that mattered. For 7 years, he treated me like I was his world. He spoiled me, indulged me, and made me feel like I was the center of his universe. Anything I wanted, he made it happen. Anything I even mentioned, he'd find a way to get it for me. I knew, deep down, that there were other women. Alaric was the kind of man who drew attention without even trying. But I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I was different and that I was special. That I was his. Then I saw the photo. It felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. 7 years. 7 years of loving him, of believing in him, of giving him everything I had. And in the end, I was nothing more than a reflection of someone else. Chapter 2. I returned to the apartment Alaric had bought for me. I'd spent so much time decorating it, making it feel warm and cozy like a real home. The living room walls were covered with photos of me and Alaric, each one telling a story. The most recent picture was from just last month, on the 10th. That day, I'd begged him to take wedding photos with me. I even joked, "If we ever break up, at least I can say I married you once." It had been a joke. But now, it felt like prophecy. And now, it was time to let go. Time to end it for good. I packed slowly, carefully taking down the decorations one by one. When it was all done, everything I owned fit into just 2 suitcases. As I zipped up the last one, my phone buzzed with a message from my brother. "I've made a reservation at the Michelin restaurant. Once you're done, come straight over." It wasn't until then that I remembered today was my birthday. When I arrived at the restaurant, I found my brother in a private room, chatting with a few of his college friends. Among them was Alaric. Sitting beside him was a woman with long, flowing hair. Even from a distance, even with just a glimpse of her profile, I knew exactly who she was. Fiona. Alaric's first love. I followed my brother into the room, trying to keep my expression neutral. But to my surprise, Fiona turned to me, flashing a perfectly polished smile. "You must be Lily, right?" she said warmly. I glanced at her, my own smile calm but detached. "Yes, that's me." She tilted her head slightly, studying me, her delicate features glowing under the light. "No wonder people say we look alike. At first, I didn't believe it, but now that I've met you in person, I can see it's true." "Really? What a coincidence." I replied lightly before taking a seat beside my brother. Across from me, Alaric sat quietly. Dinner started and everyone fell into easy conversation. I picked at my food, my appetite long gone, but my eyes couldn't help but wander to Alaric. His attention, however, was entirely on Fiona. I watched as he carefully picked the chili peppers out of her dish, one by one, and placed the food back in front of her. My brother noticed too, and couldn't resist teasing him. "Come on, Alaric. I've told you for years I hate cilantro and you never remember. But Fiona doesn't like chili, and you're over here picking out every single piece? Talk about priorities, huh?" The room broke into laughter as Alaric chuckled and replied, "What, you want me to start picking out your cilantro too?" My brother grinned, shaking his head. "Nah, forget it. My sister loves cilantro. If you pick it all out, what's she going to eat?" At that, Alaric glanced at me briefly, his expression unreadable. Then, as if nothing had happened, he picked up the menu and handed it to me. "Lily's the birthday girl today. Order whatever you want," he said, his voice warm. "How about the chicken? It's your favorite, right? Should we get a couple of extra orders?" I reached out and took the menu, keeping my face calm despite the storm raging inside me. As I flipped through the menu, Fiona leaned over, smiling, and handed me a beautifully wrapped gift bag. "Lily," she said sweetly, her tone laced with just the faintest hint of condescension. "I heard today's your birthday. This is a gift from me and Alaric. I hope you like it." Inside the bag was a light brown handbag. It was stylish and elegant, but as I looked closer, I noticed something unmistakable. The bag was nearly identical to the one Fiona was carrying tonight. The difference? Hers was an exclusive limited edition from Louis Vuitton. One of a kind. This one wasn't. Her eyes sparkled with amusement as she watched me, her smile perfectly poised, but there was no mistaking the challenge in her gaze. I knew exactly what she was trying to say. Chapter 3. "So, what do you think? Do you like it?" Fiona's voice was light, her smile warm, but there was a sharpness in her gaze that she didn't bother to hide. I glanced down at the bag in my hands, my expression unreadable, and then offered a polite smile. "Of course. Thank you." Dinner continued, but Fiona wasn't finished. Somewhere between the main course and dessert, she picked up a piece of beef and said, almost wistfully, "Alaric, do you remember that little restaurant you used to take me to back in college? The one with the beef? It was so good." She sighed, setting her chopsticks down delicately. "It's a shame they don't serve that here. I've been craving it for so long." Alaric leaned back in his chair, shaking his head with a faint smile. "All right, I'll go get it for you. But it's a bit far from here, and if the place is already closed, don't hold it against me." Without waiting for a response, he stood and left the room. Not long after, my brother and his friends decided to make a show of being helpful too, offering to pick up other snacks Fiona had casually mentioned during the meal. One by one, they all left, leaving just me and her in the private room. As soon as they were gone, Fiona tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and turned to me, her face all fox concern. "Lily, I hope you don't feel left out," she said sweetly. "It's just that I've been abroad for so long, and I really missed the food we had back in college. Everyone's just being extra kind to me, that's all." I let out a soft laugh, keeping my expression calm. From the moment I walked into the room, she'd been working to remind everyone, me especially, of how close she and Alaric used to be. Every other sentence was a reference to the old days. And every single one seemed calculated to make me feel like an outsider. Now, she was trying to act like she cared about my feelings. I was about to respond when the door opened, and my brother and his friends returned, their arms full of bags. "What were you two talking about?" my brother asked, glancing between us. Fiona immediately looped her arm through mine, flashing him the same practiced smile. "Oh, nothing much. I was just telling Lily how much I miss the good old days, that's all." The table filled with the things they'd bought, and Fiona wasted no time grabbing a glass of freshly squeezed juice. She handed it to me like she was doing me a favor. "Lily, you have to try this," she said, her voice brimming with enthusiasm. "You can't find this flavor anywhere else. When I was abroad, I used to dream about it." I took a sip. It was just orange juice. Plain, unremarkable orange juice. She'd sent them running halfway across the city for this. Unbelievable. Just then, Alaric walked back in, holding a takeout bag. "Lucky for you," he said, setting it down in front of Fiona. The place was still open. Fiona's eyes lit up as she looked at the bag, and then at me, her tone dripping with satisfaction. "See? When something or someone really matters, they'll always wait for you, no matter how long it's been." Her words were aimed directly at me, but I didn't react. Alaric's gaze flicked to me briefly, and then back to Fiona. For a moment, his expression seemed unsure, almost conflicted, but I didn't care enough to decipher it. I kept my face neutral, my focus elsewhere, and when dinner was over, I left with my brother, not sparing Alaric a second glance. Later that night, after I'd showered and changed into something comfortable, my phone buzzed with a message from Alaric. "Did you move some things out of the apartment? It feels like a lot of stuff is missing." I stared at his text for a moment, my lips curling into a faint, humorless smile. Then, I typed back. Some things were outdated. It was time to get rid of them. It seemed he still hadn't figured it out. Moments later, another notification popped up. He'd transferred a large sum of money into my account, along with a message. "Buy whatever you need to redecorate." I accepted the money without hesitation. As for redecorating, that's not my problem anymore. Chapter 4. Over dinner, Alaric casually mentioned he'd be attending the wedding of the Carter family, the wealthiest family in the country, the next day. I paused mid-reach for a bite of food, my fingers tightening slightly around my chopsticks. "Can I come with you?" I asked, my tone light, almost playful, as if it were a passing thought. Across the table, Alaric set down his knife and fork, leaning forward slightly as he reached out to ruffle my hair. "What's a kid like you going to do at a place like that?" he said, his voice warm and teasing, the kind of tone meant to soothe. "Don't you have grad school exams coming up? Stay home, study hard, and be good." I didn't let the disappointment show. Instead, I smiled as though I'd never meant the question seriously in the first place. "I was just joking. I've got plans with friends tomorrow anyway." "Good girl," he said, his tone indulgent. "I'll bring you back that blue diamond bracelet you've been eyeing. Promise." His words had barely settled when his phone buzzed on the table. Alaric glanced at the screen and then flipped the phone face down, silencing the notifications. Despite the constant buzzing, he stayed seated, finishing the meal with me as if nothing could pull him away. When we were done, he stood, grabbing his coat. "I've got some work to take care of," he said, his hand brushing over my hair again, that familiar, careless gesture of his. "Be good while I'm gone." I watched him leave, his footsteps steady and unhurried. Once the door closed behind him, I set down my chopsticks and walked over to the living room window, the city lights flickering in the distance. But my focus wasn't on the view. From where I stood, I could see Fiona waiting downstairs. She was hard to miss, standing just under the street lamp, her figure elegant and poised. Alaric didn't hesitate. He crossed the street, pulling her into his arms as though nothing else in the world mattered. I stayed by the window, watching silently as they got into his car and drove off. At that moment, whatever lingering attachment I'd felt for him vanished completely. The day of the wedding arrived. I slipped into a custom-made mermaid gown, the kind of dress that turned heads and left people speechless. It was a gift from my mother, designed by an international designer she'd handpicked. When the veil fell delicately to the floor, my mother's eyes shimmered with tears she couldn't hold back. The venue was breathtaking, filled with the kind of luxury and grandeur only the Carter family could pull off. The guest list was just as impressive, a sea of power, wealth, and influence. It didn't take long for my eyes to find Alaric in the crowd. He stood out effortlessly in a sharp suit, his posture confident yet relaxed. And beside him, Fiona. She wore a sleek black gown that hugged her frame perfectly, her every movement poised and graceful. Alaric's attention was completely on her. He held the train of her dress as she walked, his hand steady and protective. Even as they took their seats, he instinctively reached out to shield her from the sharp corner of the table, his every gesture careful and deliberate. Every so often, he leaned in to whisper something to her, his expression soft, his tone gentle. They were the picture of perfection, so flawless together it was almost painful to watch. My phone buzzed in my hand, pulling me from my thoughts. It was a message from Alaric. "Lily, how's the studying going?" A second message followed almost immediately. "The Carter wedding is incredible, so grand, you'd love it. If you weren't busy, I would have brought you along to see it." I stared at the messages, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. Here he was, playing the devoted gentleman for Fiona and yet still pretending to care about me. Did he really think I was that naive? I didn't bother replying. From across the room, I caught glimpses of him checking his phone throughout the ceremony. He'd glance at the screen, frown slightly, and then set it down again as if waiting for a response. But his attention always returned to Fiona. And then, the MC's voice rang out, clear and commanding. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our beautiful bride." The crowd fell silent as the spotlight shifted to the stage. I felt my father's arm beneath my hand, steady and reassuring as he escorted me down the aisle. His suit was impeccable, his posture proud, and his presence grounding. The train of my wedding gown trailed gracefully behind me, the delicate lace catching the light as I stepped into view. As I walked up to the stage, I felt the weight of every gaze in the room settle on me. And then, I saw him. Alaric's confident, composed expression cracked the moment his eyes landed on me. His face paled, his composure slipping, and for the first time, he looked truly shaken. Chapter 5. It was the first time I met my future husband, Nolan. He was nothing like I had imagined, far more striking, with sharp, refined features and an undeniable presence that made it hard to look away. His cold, piercing gaze settled on me, unreadable and distant. The officiant began, his voice warm and ceremonial. "Do you vow to stand by your groom, to support and understand one another, to cherish and respect each other through all that life may bring until the end of time?" He extended the microphone toward me, his tone inviting yet firm. I turned to look at Nolan, the man standing across from me, the man I barely knew. I didn't understand him, didn't know who he was beyond the surface. But at this point, there was no turning back. Taking a steadying breath, I reached for the microphone. From the corner of my eye, I caught a sudden movement in the crowd. Alaric's face had darkened, his jaw tight. "Wait!" His voice cut through the room like a blade, sharp and commanding. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd as all eyes turned toward him. My heart didn't skip a beat, nor did my hands tremble. I stayed perfectly still, watching as Fiona, seated beside him, paled visibly and tugged at his arm in a panic. "Alaric!" She whispered urgently, her voice barely audible over the stunned murmurs spreading through the room. But Alaric didn't move. His gaze burned into me, a mix of anger, disbelief, and something else I couldn't or wouldn't name. "Lily," he said, his voice low and trembling with barely contained frustration. "What the hell are you doing?" I tilted my chin upward, meeting his eyes with a calm I didn't entirely feel. His voice grew sharper. "How could you make such a huge decision without telling me?" A faint smile tugged at my lips, though it didn't reach my eyes. "Do I owe you an explanation, Alaric?" His expression faltered, but before he could answer, my gaze shifted to Fiona, who was still clutching his sleeve like a lifeline. My tone remained steady, unwavering. "You have a fiancé, don't you? And yet, I don't recall you ever informing me about that." A flicker of guilt crossed his face, but he quickly recovered. "That's different," he muttered, his voice tight. The crowd began to stir, hushed voices growing louder as the tension thickened. Nolan's mother, seated in the front row, turned to me with a look of alarm. "Lily, what's going on? Who is this man to you?" I glanced briefly at Alaric, and then turned back to my mother, my tone light, almost indifferent. "He's an old friend. You could even say he's like an older brother to me." "Older brother?" Alaric flinched as if the words had physically struck him. His eyes reddened, his jaw clenching as he struggled to maintain his composure. "Alaric," I continued, my voice growing softer but no less firm. "You're right. I should have told you about the wedding. That was my mistake. But you see, my brother wasn't exactly thrilled about me marrying so soon. He wanted me to stay home a little longer." I paused, my lips curving into a faint smile. "But don't worry. I'm looking forward to celebrating your wedding with Fiona one day." My words were deliberate and pointed, and they landed exactly where I wanted them to be. Alaric stared at me, his expression unreadable, though his eyes betrayed a flicker of something regret. Confusion? Pain? Lily, he said after a moment, his voice quieter, almost pleading. You're an adult now. Don't throw your life away over a moment of anger. Don't do this just to prove a point. Anger? Spite? I almost laughed at the absurdity of it all. He still thought this was about him. I leveled him with a steady gaze, my tone cold and resolute. Alaric, you're mistaken. Marrying Nolan isn't some impulsive decision. It's what I want. It's what I've decided after careful thought. And I don't regret it. His face hardened, his voice trembling with emotion. I don't agree with this. I raised an eyebrow, my tone sharp as I replied. And who gave you the right to agree or disagree with my life? The words struck him hard, his expression tightening as if I'd driven a knife straight into his chest. Alaric, Fiona said softly, her voice breaking the silence. Lily's found her happiness. As her older brother, shouldn't you be happy for her too? She tugged at his sleeve again, her grip firm as she tried to pull him back into his seat. Besides, she's an adult. She knows what she's doing. Let her be. But Alaric didn't move. His eyes never left mine, and for a brief moment, I saw something in his gaze, a flicker of pain, of longing. But it didn't matter anymore. Alaric, this time, you've truly lost me. Taking a deep breath, I turned back to Nolan, who had been silent this entire time. If you're here to wish us well, I said, my voice steady and clear. You're welcome to stay. But if you're here to cause trouble. I paused, letting my words sink in before continuing. I won't hesitate to have security escort you out. Before Alaric could respond, I felt Nolan's arm slide protectively around my waist, his presence solid and unyielding. Chapter 6. Fiona finally managed to tug Alaric back into his seat, but his eyes stayed on me and Nolan. Even as Nolan and I stood on stage delivering our vows and exchanging rings, I could feel Alaric's gaze intense, unrelenting, and burning with everything he couldn't say. Wait! A sudden shout cut through the hall, breaking the solemn atmosphere. Every head in the room turned toward the source of the voice. My brother was rushing toward the stage, slightly out of breath, with his boutonniere crooked on his chest from the hurry. Alaric's expression shifted for the first time that day. A flicker of hope flashed in his eyes as if his arrival might somehow change everything. James! Alaric called, his voice sharp and urgent. But my brother didn't even glance at him. His focus was entirely on me. When he reached the stage, his eyes, red and glassy, took me in. He adjusted my veil with trembling hands, his jaw tight as he tried to steady himself. Then he turned to Nolan, his expression hardening. You! He said, his voice low but commanding. I don't care if you're some billionaire's heir. If you ever hurt my sister, I'll make you regret it. I don't care who you are. Nolan didn't so much as flinch. His voice was calm, deep, and steady. You don't have to worry. I won't. My brother stared at him for a moment longer before clapping him on the shoulder, the gesture a mix of warning and reluctant acceptance. He swallowed hard, blinking rapidly as he turned and walked off the stage, his shoulders tense with the weight of his emotions. The applause that broke out was deafening. I glanced at Alaric. His face was pale, his expression carved from stone, but the storm brewing in his eyes was impossible to miss. Whatever hope he'd held onto had shattered. The ceremony continued, and by the time Nolan and I began making our rounds to toast the guests, Alaric was already drunk. When we reached his table, he suddenly staggered to his feet. Before I could react, he pulled me into a tight embrace, his arms locking around me like he was afraid I'd slip away forever. Lily. His voice cracked, raw with desperation. Don't leave me. Please, don't leave me. His tears fell freely as he clung to me, his entire body trembling with the force of his emotions. I had never seen him like this before. Alaric, the man who was always composed, always in control, was now breaking apart in front of everyone. But it was too late. I pushed him away, my voice cold and calm as I turned to Fiona. "He's yours now. Take care of him." Fiona's face was a mask of fury and humiliation. As she struggled to steady Alaric, she leaned in close to me, her voice sharp and venomous. "Lily!" she hissed, her tone low enough that only I could hear. "Don't think you've won. Just wait, you'll regret this." I smiled faintly, unbothered by her threat. "Alaric is all yours," I said lightly. "Trust me, I have no interest. Enjoy being his one and only." Her face darkened further, but she said nothing as she dragged Alaric out of the room. As they left, I caught my brother's gaze from across the hall. His expression was conflicted, as though he'd finally pieced together the truth about my history with Alaric. But it didn't matter anymore. When the wedding finally came to an end and the guests had left, I returned to the bridal suite alone. After the boisterous games and teasing from friends, the house had gone quiet. Nolan walked in, his tie loosened and his shirt slightly undone. His dark eyes found mine, and there was something in his gaze, something cold yet smoldering. "Lily." "Yes?" I looked up at him, startled by the sudden intensity in his tone. He stepped closer, his tall frame towering over me. His gaze, usually so detached, now held a warmth that felt almost dangerous, like flickers of fire beneath a starry night sky. "From now on," he murmured, his voice firm. "You're my wife." His lips brushed against my earlobe, his breath warm and unyielding. "And remember," he said, his tone dropping into something lower, darker. "Stay away from other men." Before I could respond, he kissed me possessively, unapologetically, leaving no room for argument. That night, I didn't sleep. When morning finally came, I felt as though my entire body had been taken apart and pieced back together. Exhaustion weighed heavy on me as I dragged myself out of bed, my legs trembling with every step. When I finally made it downstairs, Nolan was already in the kitchen. He stood by the stove, dressed in a tailored suit with his shirt collar undone and no tie in sight. The faint marks on his collarbone bruises I'd left the night before peeked out from beneath the fabric. As I slowly descended the stairs, my legs nearly gave out. I had to grip the railing to steady myself. Nolan noticed immediately. His eyes flicked up to meet mine, his expression calm as always. "Take your time," he said flatly, as if the state I was in had nothing to do with him. "You know how to cook?" I asked, unable to hide my surprise as I noticed the perfectly laid out breakfast on the table. Back when I was with Alaric, I was always the one cooking. He was busy with work. So naturally, I took care of everything else. "Yes," he replied simply, his tone as indifferent as ever. I sat down, avoiding his gaze as my eyes landed instead on the faint bruises on his collarbone. Heat rushed to my face, and I quickly lowered my head, focusing on the food in front of me. As I ate, his voice broke the silence. "From now on, I'll handle the cooking." I looked up, startled, meeting his impassive gaze. "Why?" He coughed lightly, glancing away for just a moment before replying, his tone as calm as ever. "I'm afraid your cooking won't suit my taste." I blinked, caught off guard by the subtle awkwardness in his expression. A man who could cook for himself. That wasn't so bad. Maybe this arrangement would work out better than I thought. Chapter 7. At the post-wedding banquet, I encountered Alaric again. He sat silently next to my brother. Fiona leaned towards him, deliberately feeding him food. At first, Alaric cooperated with a heavy expression. But when I approached, his eyes quickly fell on the marks on my neck. I confidently toasted him. His slender fingers tightened around his glass, but he still raised it towards me. Then he downed the entire drink in one go. Throughout the process, Nolan's hand firmly held mine. Especially when we reached Alaric, his grip tightened. That night, I stayed to chat with my parents. Alaric didn't leave either. He pretended to play games with my brother but later barged into my room. He hugged me tightly as soon as he entered. I instinctively tried to push him away. He refused to let go. "Alaric, what are you doing?" His eyes were red as he asked. "Did you give yourself to him?" I found it laughable. "I'm his wife now. Lily, why didn't you wait for me? I told you, when the time was right, I would marry you. Why didn't you wait?" His voice was hoarse. "Wait for you?" I laughed bitterly. "I waited for 7 years, only to see your first love return and become your fiancé. Lily, I can explain." His fingers threaded through my hair, his eyes red as he looked at me. "Alaric, please respect my boundaries." I coldly pushed him away. He stood there, stiff. Soon, my brother knocked on the door. "Lily." I opened the door, and my brother saw Alaric in my room. He glanced at me. "Mom made your favorite lotus seed soup." He then looked at Alaric. "You go eat first. I need to talk to Alaric." The door closed. I didn't know what they talked about. All I knew was that while I was eating the lotus seed soup, Alaric left with a cold face. And my brother's expression wasn't good either. After that, they seemed to lose contact for a long time. Until one day, my brother's company ran into trouble. Unexpectedly, the one who helped was Alaric. He hurt my sister. I'll never forgive him. My brother gritted his teeth. He had always been the one who loved me the most. Chapter 8. 6 months into the marriage, I found out I was pregnant with Nolan's child. During these 6 months, he treated me very well. But he always had a cold expression. Yet, his personality was warm. We discovered many shared interests. One day, while having afternoon tea with my best friend, she teased me. "Lily, you've gained a lot of weight." I touched my belly and laughed. "I'm pregnant. How can I not gain weight?" "No, I mean, ever since you got married, your appetite has increased a lot. You used to always diet. Gaining a pound made you anxious." I remembered. I used to maintain my figure meticulously. Because Alaric preferred slender women. When I was with Alaric, he often praised my slim waist and the mole between my eyebrows. He would kiss me passionately. Later, I realized his aesthetic was entirely based on Fiona. But after marrying Nolan, he never criticized my figure. Every part of me seemed beautiful to him. Once, I gained over 10 pounds from overeating and mentioned dieting. Nolan pulled me close, smiling. "Why diet? Isn't it good to be a bit plump?" It turns out, when someone truly loves you, you don't need to maintain any specific trait. I smiled without saying anything. After saying goodbye to my friend, I felt a weight on my shoulder. Turning around, I saw Fiona. She wore light makeup, still looking delicate. "Can we talk?" She gestured towards a calf. I felt a bit speechless. I had just come out of one. But seeing her serious expression, I raised an eyebrow. "Sure." Sitting in the calf, Fiona ordered 2 coffees. I quietly watched her sip her coffee. Checking the time, we had been sitting for almost half an hour. She hadn't said a word. I picked up my bag. "If there's nothing, I'll be leaving." "Wait!" She suddenly put down her coffee. Her face changed visibly. Seeing me sit back down, she sighed. "I came to ask you for a favor." "What is it?" She lowered her head. "Do you know Alaric is leaving?" "Leaving?" I looked at her in confusion. She stirred her coffee. "Alaric is going abroad. He's leaving me." She looked up, her eyes red. "Do you know how much I love him?" I coldly replied. "If you loved him so much, why did you leave him in the first place?" Tears streamed down Fiona's face. "My family went bankrupt. My dad had to take us abroad to escape debt. When we broke up, I didn't tell Alaric. He loved me so much. I kept an eye on him. Over the years, he had many women around him, but none could get into his heart. Each of them had a bit of me in them, except you. Fiona took out her phone and showed me an account named Lovefish. Whenever Alaric had something on his mind, he would write it here. After I left, all his posts were about me. But after you appeared, I looked at Alaric's account. It recorded every detail of our life together. If I hadn't seen it myself, I wouldn't have believed it. A man who rarely spoke would record his thoughts in a corner. Fiona's voice choked with emotion. I felt like a thief, using a fake account to watch your happiness. Do you know how it feels to see the man you once loved fall for someone else? I forced a smile. But you came back, and he chose you without hesitation. Hearing this, her smile turned more self-deprecating. That was Alaric pretending. I told him I had a terminal illness. He found out why I left him. I begged him to stay with me for my last days, and he agreed. Alaric isn't the same as before. His mind and heart are full of you. Do you know how much he suffered on your wedding day? Lily, I lost. I completely lost to you. Chapter 9. She took out a hospital diagnosis with the glaring words, stomach cancer. She choked. I don't have much time left. My only wish is for Alaric to be happy. Because of you, he doesn't even care about his life. I've given up. I told him to win you back, but he refused. He tortures himself every day. I had to lie, saying I was faking my illness. He got angry and decided to go abroad, saying he never wanted to see me again. Please, see him. I'm afraid if he leaves, you'll never have another chance to meet. I don't want him to live with regret and pain like me. I had considered many possibilities. But this was beyond my imagination. Looking at the ring on my finger, my eyes darkened. My heart was in turmoil. I decided to see him. At the airport, he wore a black cap, covering most of his face. He was lost in thought. Alaric. I called from a distance. He looked up, staring at me. After a while, he spoke hoarsely. Lily. I took a deep breath and walked closer. Alaric, why didn't you say goodbye? He didn't answer, just looked at me deeply. Is he good to you? Seeing me nod. His eyes showed a mix of relief and sadness. Finally, he spoke in a raspy voice. That's good. All your businesses are here. If you go abroad, you'll have to start over. Why bother? He smiled. A new place isn't so bad, I said. Fiona is really sick. She said she was faking it to make you. She doesn't want to see you suffer anymore. She doesn't have much time left. Hearing this, Alaric pressed his lips tightly, silent for a long time. I've arranged for someone to take care of her. He looked at me and asked, what about you? Do you want me to stay or leave? I looked into his eyes. I didn't know. Seeing my hesitation, he smiled and ruffled my hair. Silly girl. I've thought it through. You're happy. I don't want to disturb you. Isn't that the answer you wanted deep down? I stood there frozen. The boarding announcement sounded. Tears fell from his eyes. I'm leaving. Take care of yourself. I watched his figure disappear. My heart was filled with indescribable emotions. My phone buzzed with a message. It was from Nolan. A photo of a sumptuous dinner. Wife, dinner's ready. Come home quickly. Seeing his cute emoji, I smiled from the heart. Chapter 10. Alaric's side story. Our story wasn't about being a replacement. The first time I saw her, she had short hair and was clumsy. Like a cute little kitten. A bit silly too. When the basketball hit her, she didn't dodge. I wanted to pull her away, but she fell into my arms. Had enough? Trying to take advantage of me? I teased her, and she looked up, blushing. Later, James introduced her, and I realized. She was the silly sister he always talked about. At that time, I had only been separated from Fiona for half a year. Although the pain had lessened. Whenever someone mentioned her, it still hurt. Honestly. The first time I saw Lily, I didn't think she looked like Fiona. She was lively and cute, while Fiona was always calm. Fiona's personality was similar to mine, while Lily was like something strange that suddenly entered my world. Her little head was always full of odd ideas. I was really curious about her. How could someone be so carefree and cheerful? The year I broke up with Fiona, my family's business wasn't doing well. My father wanted me to take over after graduation. The heavy burden fell on my shoulders. My father's education was always strict. No room for mistakes. That year, the company's situation was bad, and I was under a lot of pressure. Every time I saw Lily sharing interesting things, I was drawn to her. That night was James's birthday party. It should have been a happy occasion, but my dad called. He scolded me harshly. It was the first time I talked back to him. But I didn't feel any relief, just a burning in my chest. I drank too much that night, and in a daze, I heard Lily calling me. Her bright eyes looked at me, and I couldn't help but press her down. I kissed her soft lips. I was 6 years older than her. After taking her that night, I felt guilty. I smoked in the hallway all night. I had wronged her. She was James's beloved sister. How could I do that to my best friend's sister? After thinking all night. When I returned to the room, she was still asleep. To me, she was like the rising sun, so bright and dazzling. And I didn't deserve her. When she woke up, she was embarrassed, looking at the bloodstain on the sheet. I made up my mind and asked her, "Do you want to be my girlfriend?" This silly girl kept nodding. From that moment, I felt a sense of attachment. Chapter 11. Every moment with Lily made me feel relaxed. But because of the company's issues, I rarely had time for her. Watching her daily updates, the scenery and food at her school, I couldn't help but smile. Fortunately, hard work paid off, and the company's situation improved. I finally had some free time. That day, I couldn't wait to buy a ticket to her city. But I saw her standing with a boy. Maybe it was because of a failed relationship. Maybe it was because I knew I was much older than her. This relationship might not have a future. But when I saw her reject the boy, saying she had a boyfriend, I was stunned. When I was with Fiona, she had many suitors but never directly said she had a boyfriend. Even when I was jealous, she said she wanted to keep a low profile. I walked up to her, and she looked surprised and happy. "Alaric, why are you here?" I didn't say anything, just pulled her into my arms, hugging her tightly. She was soft, like a little kitten. She asked in a muffled voice, "Alaric, did you miss me?" "Missed you to death," I replied. That night, we went to a hotel. Although we had been together before, without the influence of alcohol, standing together was a bit awkward. I sat on the bed. The sound of clothes rustling. When the water started running, I sneaked a peek. The bathroom door was slightly transparent, showing her silhouette. I held my breath. Sometimes I really despised myself. So pathetic. Alaric. Lily came out wrapped in a towel, her hair wet, water droplets sliding down her collarbone and disappearing into her chest. My eyes darkened, and I pulled her over, kissing her. The towel fell. Lily gasped. I stopped her hand, my voice hoarse. "Don't move." She looked uncomfortable, blushing from her cheeks to her ears. "You're beautiful." I kissed her earlobe reverently. The kisses trailed down. Afterward, Lily leaned against me, mumbling, "Have you been with other women before?" I held back a laugh. "Isn't it too late to ask now?" She glared at me and turned away. I had to coax her back gently. "No, from the beginning, it's only been you." Chapter 12. I dated Fiona for 3 years, but we always kept a distance. My family pressured me to marry. Honestly, I wasn't sure if we could last. So whenever she wanted to take the next step, I refused. Not because I didn't love her, But because I loved her, I wanted to be responsible. Our relationship ended without closure. I'm glad I didn't hurt her. People said I had many women around me. I never denied it. After being with Lily, I decided to be responsible. With her, I couldn't see anyone else, including Fiona. When Fiona contacted me, I felt nothing. I wanted to remind her to move on. But she told me about the past. When we broke up, I went through the darkest time of my life. Now she came back, saying it was all a misunderstanding. It felt like a joke, even though I knew it wasn't her fault. We couldn't go back. She said she had a terminal illness and wanted to spend her last days with me. I wanted to refuse, but her mother found me, kneeling and begging. I agreed. I wanted to keep it from Lily and marry her after it was over. But she found out. When she looked at me like a stranger, it hurt. When I learned she was marrying Nolan, I realized how much pain I had caused her. I woke up to how wrong I was. I wanted to tell her. I no longer loved Fiona. My heart was full of her. But it was too late. On her wedding day, I watched her marry someone else. The rose I nurtured bloomed in another's arms. I couldn't describe the feeling. I hated her for playing with my feelings. But maybe I wronged her first. Losing the one you love. It's a pain you can't cry out. I locked myself in my room for days. Fiona came every day, but I locked the door. She couldn't get in, crying outside. She apologized, telling me to win Lily back. But I knew Lily too well. She seemed silly and soft. But once she decided, she wouldn't turn back. I stayed locked up for a week. Until I saw Lily's update. She was pregnant. And had gained weight. She used to diet, anxious about gaining weight. I wanted to tell her she didn't need to diet. Once, she gained weight, and I joked she wasn't fat, praising her slim waist. She was happy for a long time. Now I realized, maybe she dieted for me. Seeing her truly happy, I understood. Lily, I wish you eternal happiness. I'll always be your support. Whenever you need me, I'll be there.